I want to thank everyone for joining us. Like I said, this is the webinar of 10 techniques for a more productive you. It should have an exclamation there at the end because we're really excited and enthusiastic about this. Third webinar that we are offering in April to our members, our institutional personal members of Indiana Library Federation. We had this session scheduled for one of our regional conferences that was supposed to take and unfortunately had to cancel those. But we are really grateful for Jenny stepping up and being able to present this virtually to you all, especially at this time where we all could use a little bit more productivity. So, okay, I'm going to introduce Jenny. Jenny Cobiella Mondor is the Assistant Director at Eckhart Public Library. She is a great leader and volunteer within ILF and does great things for us always, and I really appreciate that. I do want to say really quickly before I hand it over to her that we will be recording this webinar so that you have an opportunity to share with your staff if you need to afterwards. We are providing LEU certificates for it as well. So I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to mute myself and disappear and turn it over to Jenny. Thank you.
All right, let me get my screen share up here for my slides. All right. Okay, so like she said, it is 10 techniques for a more productive you. And so this really came out of some work that I've done with myself. I am the Assistant Director at Eckhart Public Library in Auburn. And it's been a really interesting time to be the assistant director. We had a fire in 2017 that we had to gut our main library building. And so I've been balancing a building project for about 2.5 years, 4 buildings, more than 30 staff with me and my director. I've been doing a lot of the day-to-day operations of getting us back up and running, keeping us running, and keeping our all of our services going. And so I also do a lot of other things as well within the library community and within our community. I'm on the marketing committee for ILF, and I've presented with ILF. I'm on the Auburn Main Street, one of our committees for that. I'm active in our church, and I also want to make sure that I have time to do the fun things that I want to do, go out with my friends. My sister lives in Milwaukee, and I want to make sure I have time to go visit her, travel, read, all of those kinds of things. And I was finding it really hard to get all of my work done and to also be able to do the things that I wanted to do. So my goal for 2019, kind of my New Year's resolution, was that I wanted to get more organized and I wanted to get better at managing my time. So I did a lot of research and I also tried a lot of different things, and that's kind of where this has come out of. In the past 1.5 years, something like that now, I have become a lot more productive. I've been able to do a lot of the things that I want to do and get more work done, and so I wanted to share that with others of how I have been able to do that. So I've got 10 kind of tips and techniques that you can try. I'm not an expert, and your mileage may vary on some of these things, but these are the things that have helped me and things to start to think about and then make them your own. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is the concept of mise en place. So if you have watched any kind of cooking shows, you may have heard this term before, but I've got a quote on here from Anthony Bourdain about mise en place. It is the concept of having everything in its place before you start something. So chefs, line cooks use that to make sure that they are ready to make a great meal. And so one of the things that I like to do at the beginning of every day, before I do anything else, before I check my email and start on projects and all that kind of thing, is to get everything in its place, get my mise en place. So you can spend time thinking about what you need to accomplish, what's going on, all of those kinds of things. I use something called a Panda Planner. That's how I kind of accomplish this. And that has, it's a planner, and it has a daily kind of thing that you fill out with your to-do list, your priorities. It has a gratefulness component and an affirmation component and things like that. So what that really does is allows you to get into a proactive mindset about what kinds of things you need to accomplish during the day instead of being more reactive. So that it's been really helpful with focus, to be able to sit down and take that time, just 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, to be able to figure out what is it that I need to accomplish today. And things will come up during the day, obviously. That happens to all of us. But it gives us kind of an idea of what are those priorities that I need to have during the day. So number one, get everything in its place. The second thing then is kind of related to this, and that is prioritization. And there are a lot of different ways to prioritize. So there are several different methods, and I've used kind of bits and pieces of these. And there's probably, I'm sure there's more out there, but these are ones that have kind of been helpful. One of them is called the Moscow method. So you have 4 different things. You have your lists of different things. You have your must-have items, your should have, your could have, and your won't have. So if you're looking at kind of your deliverables or the things that you need to get done, you have the things that you must get done. Short of an absolute catastrophe, you need to get these things done today or this week, however you kind of look at your time. So short of a calamity or a catastrophe, you are getting these things done. And then there's the should haves, the things that you're probably going to be able to get done. You're probably going to be able to deliver them. You have a pretty fair chance. The could haves are the things that if things go really, really well, you'll be able to get this thing done. And then the won't haves are the things you just don't have the time or the budget or the ability to get done in this time. And so those are kind of a way you can categorize. And what I really like, I like the idea of being able to look at, that's a really good way to prioritize what you have to do. But I actually like, even better and kind of related, is the idea of the Eisenhower decision matrix, where you're looking at the importance of tasks and the urgency of tasks. So you have your things: do first, do later, delegate, and delete. So you're looking at the things that are important and urgent. Those are the things you're going to do first. They are important. You have to get them done. Then they have a time component. And then there's things that are due later, which are important to do, but they're not urgent. So you can push those back until after you've done your do first things. Things that are urgent, that need to get done, but they're not particularly important in the grand scheme of what you're doing, you can delegate those to other people or find somebody else who can help you get that done. And then things that aren't important or urgent, you don't do those things. Again, it's not a perfect system, and I know there are things that I have to do that don't feel particularly important, but I have to get them done anyway. So again, not a perfect system, but it's a way to start to think about what do you need to get done first. And so that kind of flows into the what has really helped me, which is a idea called Eat That Frog. And there's a book called Eat That Frog that is about procrastination. And it comes from the Mark Twain attributed quote about, if it's your job to eat a frog, you better do it first thing in the morning. And if you have to eat 2 frogs, eat the biggest one first. So that is the idea of coming in and getting the things done that you need to get done first. Don't procrastinate. Find, the worst thing, the biggest thing, the ugliest thing, the thing you have to get done, the thing you're not looking forward to getting done, but that needs to get done, and get that done first, because the rest of your day is going to be able to fall into place a lot easier. And how do you eat a frog? You do it one bite at a time. So you get that task, that big ugly frog you need to eat, and you just start chowing down on it. So take those things and get it done. And that has been probably the most helpful thing out of all of these things as I've looked for trying to prioritize, is the idea of just eat that frog, get it done, and then the rest of your day kind of falls into place. Okay, so the third thing I have is a kind of time focus technique. And this one has been helpful for me as well. It's called the Pomodoro technique. And it is based on, Pomodoro means tomato. And so it's a tomato timer, basically. So you basically just take a task that you need to get done, and it helps you to focus on it. So you set a timer for 25 minutes and you work on the task uninterrupted. After you've worked on it uninterrupted for 25 minutes, you take a check, put a check mark on a piece of paper, and then take a 5-minute break. And then every time you've done 4 check marks, or it's about 2 hours, then you take a longer break, a 15-minute break, a 30-minute break, whatever it is. I am not particularly strict with the Pomodoro technique, but I used it when I was trying to start to become more productive. I used it more strictly to train myself to focus on one task at a time. And in a few slides, I will talk a little bit more about focusing on one task at a time versus multitasking. But this is such a great way to do that. And there are apps and websites. I mean, I literally just took my phone and set a timer. I could do several timers, and I had a 25-minute Pomodoro timer and I had a 5-minute Pomodoro timer, and I would do 25 minutes and then I'd switch to the 5-minute timer and take a break, look at Facebook, check my phone, all that kind of stuff, and then go back to working for 25 minutes. And that has trained me. So now I don't need to sit with that timer all the time. It's still helpful if I'm really feeling distracted, but I don't have to use it all the time. But it's there for me, and it's trained my brain to be a little bit better about focusing. So number 4, my 4th tip has to do with meetings, which is one of the biggest time sucks I think we all have sometimes. We have management team meetings every week. We have staff meetings every month, and then there's lots of other meetings that come up throughout the week and the month and everything. So one of the ways to become more productive is to make your meetings more productive, especially those of us who are in management. I know that a lot of our time is taken up with meetings. So I have a few ways to really make meetings more efficient and effective and get them done and moving on with your day and getting the things done that you need to get done. The first thing is to have an agenda for every meeting that you're having. So that you know what you're discussing and the people who are in your meeting know what you're discussing. Give it to people beforehand. We set up, for our management team meetings, we set up a Google Keep document that's just like check boxes of here's all the things we're going to talk about. We share it amongst ourselves. Everybody adds to it. For our staff meetings, we send out several days in advance. We say, here's the things we're going to talk about. And so people can research, they know what they're going to talk about. They're not going to get blindsided by trying to make some decision that they haven't researched. You can even assign pre-work so that people are ready. So say you need to read this before the meeting, or you need to think about this, or you need to research this kind of thing. Another thing that we have is, and we haven't ever actually called it this. I found it somewhere and I thought it was a really nice way to put it, to create a parking lot in your meeting. So that's a place that ideas and issues can go that the whole group doesn't need to discuss. And we've found, sometimes there's something that comes up and then there's only a couple of people who really need to make a decision on it or need to hash out something or figure out the procedures for something. Instead of spending time in the meeting with everybody in the meeting, with only 2 people talking about that, write it down or send it to them and say, you can discuss this after the meeting. And again, I found a thing where it was called a parking lot, which I thought was really great. You park your idea there. We just mostly will go in our management meetings, we'll say, okay, well, you two need to talk about this. So put that on your list and we'll move on to the next agenda item. That way the rest of us are not just sitting there like watching a couple of people hash out procedures about something that we don't really have anything to do with. Also, something to avoid is the data dump meetings. And I learned this one the hard way because we were having meetings like this. You don't want to spend a lot of time in meetings sharing things that could be written down. Kind of like the cartoon I have there. The meetings could have all been emails. We're all learning that as we're working more from home, that there are things that could just be emails. So when we first started our management team meetings, we were spending lots of our time going over, oh, this is what this team's doing. This is what this team's doing. And just kind of listing what people were working on. And we realized we didn't need to spend time verbalizing that. So we send out a team update every Monday morning ahead of our Monday afternoon management team meetings. So that we kind of know what everybody else's team is doing, what everybody's working on. And then we can ask questions if there's something that doesn't make sense. But other than that, we have that information without having to spend the time to actually just sit and listen to people talking about it. So that really leads us to this final point of meetings need to have action items. You need to spend your time in a meeting discussing and making decisions, or doing things that you can't do as just an email or a one-on-one conversation, and then have action items coming out of the meeting. It may be that you need to convey a decision, or you need to go and do more research on, you discuss something and you realize you need more research. You need to complete a task. You need to put some training into practice, all of those kinds of things. So really making your meetings run efficiently and make them something that doesn't feel like a waste of time makes them a more productive meeting and makes you a more productive person. And it takes out all of that stuff that you could do at a different time. Maybe the things that are less important but still urgent, you could read it in an email in between times when you're trying to work on things. Efficient meetings, very important. The next thing is maybe kind of controversial. That's why I had to put the sometimes. So ignore your email sometimes. And this is the idea of multitasking really not being great for your productivity. There have actually been studies that say that multitasking really diminishes your productivity. It doesn't boost your productivity. There's a concept called in like brain science called context switching. So it's the idea that every time that you switch what you're doing, it takes time for your brain to switch to a new task. So that it can be as simple as I'm working on something, I'm typing up something or thinking, working on a plan or working on a policy, and my email dings and I go over to check my email and there's a question. And so I have to switch my brain from, okay, this policy that I was working on to what is the question that I have in this email? Okay, I need to answer this email. And sometimes that'll just take you down rabbit holes and you never get back to that policy. But even if you do, then you have to go back and switch your brain back to that policy. They've actually done studies of people who say that they're good at multitasking are actually the worst at multitasking because they're easily distractible. You train your brain to get distracted by all of those kinds of things. And so it really wires your brain differently or makes your brain work differently where you're actually less productive if you're doing a lot of multitasking. If the tasks are complex, like if you're on a management level kind of thing, that I'm doing a lot of these complex tasks, if I'm bouncing back and forth between them, it takes forever to get them done rather than to sit down and get something done, which again, the Pomodoro technique is a good way to get yourself to do that. You sit down for 25 minutes and then during that 5-minute break, you can look at your email and maybe there's a task that comes in that's more important, but very rarely are you going to get an email that's so urgent that you can't wait 20 minutes to get it to do it. So don't be checking it all the time. They've even shown in these studies that chronic multitaskers actually have trouble focusing when they do have to just do one task, because it changes your cognitive function and you have to retrain your brain back to being more efficient and more effective and easier to focus, which is why for a while I was using the Pomodoro technique really strictly to retrain my brain from this multitasking I was always doing to focusing on one task at a time. So, you know, ignore your email for chunks of time while you're trying to get things done, and then go through your email. I know that there's emergencies that come up, and so if there's a way to be able to be contacted, if there's an emergency, whether it's like, okay, if you call me on the phone, it's an emergency. If you email me, it's not. Things like that, and trying to figure out what are those things and what can you tell and we're on the desk, you have to multitask. You want to be working on something, because you don't want to just be sitting and twiddling your thumbs waiting for a patron to come with a question. But also you can't really, you don't want to not be doing, you don't want to not be doing anything, but you don't want to be doing something that you have to take a long time to switch. So it's thinking about how that multitasking works too. All right. This next one I know is hard for a lot of people too, and that is decluttering and getting rid of some of your mess. There is a substantial link, according to studies, between procrastination and clutter problems, and that happens in all age groups. So clutter actually increases the cortisol in your body and can cause a stress response to you. So it is not great to have a lot of clutter around. It pulls away your focus. And the other thing that really you don't think about is having a lot of things around, especially a lot of things in your workspace, makes it feel like nothing is ever getting completed. So it makes you feel like your work isn't getting done. So really making sure, trying to make your workspace as clutter-free and as calm as you can is a good thing. I've had some issues with this lately, because now I'm working from home and my house is more cluttered than my office, because I'd really worked on my office. And so now I've had to try to like get my workspace at home a little bit better set up. But the other thing is you spend a lot of time looking for things if you're not organized, and that decreases your productivity as well. So spending a little bit of time every day, every week, every month to declutter your desk, get yourself organized, actually will end up saving you time, even though it may feel like, oh, I'm just sitting and like cleaning. That's not really a good use of my time, but it actually is, and it helps your mental health as well. I especially like to do that before I'll go on a vacation, or like on a Friday before a weekend, so that when I come back, my desk is very clean and I feel ready to tackle the next week. All right. The next thing is another probably a little more controversial type thing. Learn to say no, or at least learn to consider what is doable and what is not doable. There's things that you have to do, so you can't say no to like essential parts of your job, or your boss tells you need to do something. But what you have to do is consider what is doable for yourself and work with your manager to make sure that your workload is you have the right amount of workload. It doesn't mean that you can't work hard and push yourself, because that's important. But at the same time, if you get too many things on your plate, you can't get things done. And if you're a manager, you need to listen to your staff when they talk to you about that. Again, you don't have to go, okay, yeah, you don't have to do that, but there's working on that prioritization and how do you do those things. So if you're somebody who's super busy with a project and your manager asks your staff, like, can volunteer, you know, can you be part of this? Or if you're, some of those things like we have a staff association and things like that. Sometimes you may be in a season of your life or of your work cycle that you cannot be a part of some of those things, and that's okay. Now, there's different ways you can say no, or different ways that you can get that discussion going on what is the priority. So things like, thank you for thinking of me, but I was planning to spend my week working on this project. Is this other project more important? What's my priority? Is there something I can drop? Is there something that can be delegated to somebody else? Or even, you know, what a great opportunity. If it's an opportunity that you don't think that you can do, you know, you can thank people for it. It's exciting to be asked to do things. But sometimes you have to say, unfortunately, I can't do that right now. And I had to do some of that after the fire. I continued to want to get more involved in the library world in general, the Indiana Library Federation, join boards and things in my community. And there's been things I've had to say, I can't do this right now because we're too busy with the building project and getting the library reopened and wrangling with insurance and raising money and all of that kind of thing. So you really want to be thinking about what are the things that you can do. And that's what Diane there, clear the clutter off your calendar. And that's true. You want to clear your clutter off your desk. You also want to clear the clutter off of your calendar and really focus on what you for it. You're going to be able to really put your time and your energy toward the things that you are doing. And those are going to be the great things. Okay, this one is probably the most important one for right now when we're all in a really difficult situation. And that is the idea of throwing yourself a pity party. If you are having a bad day, if things don't work out, if you're upset about something, take a little break. Take a timed break, but take a little break. I learned this technique back even when I was a kid from my mom, who has had a lot of medical issues. She's a breast cancer survivor. She's had a lot of surgeries and different kinds of things. And she, when bad things happen, when she'll get a bad diagnosis or she's feeling really sore or feeling just really rotten, she gives herself time to have a pity party. And she will sit down and she'll say, okay, what time is it? Okay, I'm going to have a pity party for 15 minutes. And for 15 minutes, you just like wallow in your feelings. You feel everything that you're feeling. And then after that 15 minutes, you go, okay, I have had my pity party. I have felt bad for myself. I have felt those feelings. Now I can get up and move forward. And it's been a really helpful thing for me. So put a time limit on it and find what works best for you. Maybe you're having a really terrible day and nothing's going right, and you're going to go take a walk for 15 minutes and just clear your head and get things in the right place. You might need to cry. I tend to be a frustration crier. And so I'll go find a place. Maybe it's even sitting in your car or finding a break room or a conference room where you can just sit and like cry or like rant to yourself or play a mindless cell phone game that gets you going, and just put a time limit on that to be able to process your feelings, feel what you're feeling, and then move on with your day. And again, that's incredibly important right now when we're all working from home and we don't know when we're going to be back and we don't know what we're doing, and it's a really difficult time. So, be kind to yourself and let yourself feel that frustration and that angst and that anxiousness. Just make sure you're not wallowing in it forever by putting that kind of time limit on it. And you will feel better. You'll be more productive after your little pity party than you were before, because you've spent that time to really be able to get through those feelings and then focus on the things that you need to focus on next. So, yeah, Emma says ebooks. So when she'd be overwhelmed at work, she'd hide in the lift for a couple of minutes and read a few paragraphs. That is perfect. Take those sometimes it's even a little micro break, take a couple of minutes I would say look at Facebook, but sometimes that stresses me out more, but do something, you know, take those brain breaks, and you will end up being able to focus on yourself better once you are done with just taking that little break. And speaking of breaks, take your big breaks too. Vacations are so important. The picture on the slide there is actually a picture of my sister and I. We, in February, got to take a trip to Israel. So that's us with Saint Jerome, who is the patron saint of librarians. And my sister's a librarian as well. She's an academic librarian. And so we had to take a picture with Saint Jerome. We were like, absolutely. But take your vacation time. That was a 2-week trip that I was off work for 2 weeks. And that's kind of hard to do. But your vacation, part of it, your vacation time is part of your compensation package. So you need to be taking that because that's part of your pay. Take all of your vacation days and your holidays every single year. So part of it is because it's compensation, but also it gives you time to be refreshed and to see something else, do something else, and step away from work. So the U.S. Travel Association does a lot of research into vacation time for the U.S. And some of it is because they want you to travel, so they want to make sure that they have those numbers like, you should do this, you need to take your vacation and then travel, says the U.S. Travel Association. But they have the research, you know, over half of Americans let at least some of their vacation days go. So it's like 700 million unused days that they counted up in 2017 of days that people didn't use. So use that vacation time. Use your sick time when you're sick. Obviously right now with COVID-19 and everything, it's important to take sick time to prevent the spread of illnesses, but it also gives you time to recover and to keep yourself healthier. And it's better to take 1 or 2 days of sick time to recover than to try to work through being sick and then making yourself sicker and needing to take a week or 2 off later. So just on and if you're sick, you're not doing your best work anyway. You know, you just need to make sure that you are recovering for what you need to do. And when you're doing this, the really important thing with vacation or sick time is to completely disconnect. Don't be checking your email. Don't be checking we use Google Hangouts. Don't be checking that stuff. So 60% of Hoosiers, according to the U.S. Travel Association, 60% of Hoosiers completely disconnect when they're on vacation. And that's actually like the best rate in the country. The national number is at 37%. So most people are still checking email. They're still getting phone calls, all that kind of thing. So when I took this picture of St. Jerome, I sent that to my coworkers. And that was, other than I needed to send one quote for a press release, other than that, I didn't check my email. I didn't get on our Hangouts. And the library continued to be a library. And when I got back, yes, there were a lot of emails, but everything continued to go and we got everything done. Disconnecting too can also expose gaps in your organization, things that only one person can do. And it's scary when that happens, when somebody's on vacation and you're left behind and you're like, oh no, nobody knows how to do this. What do we do? But it also exposes those gaps and teaches you the things that you need to have a backup or procedures for so that everything can continue to run smoothly no matter what happens, because people move on to other jobs, people get sick, whatever happens, that your library can continue to run. So I think it's really important, and I encourage everybody at our library when they're on vacation to disconnect. Some of them do it better than others, but I really encourage people to just disconnect, and the library your work will still be there when you get back, and the library will still continue to function as a library, and people will continue to be able to get their items and get their programs and all that kind of thing. And finally, the other thing that really helps me be productive is having a project or a hobby and things that fulfill you. Because it's easy to get burnt out. if you're on all the time. And once you start to get burnt out, your productivity goes down. There are studies that show that having a creative hobby makes you perform better at work, and it reduces your burnout. So make sure that you have something that you like to go home and do, or go out with your friends and do. So I have a picture of my D&D dice. So I play Dungeons and Dragons some with my husband and some friends. I like to read because I'm a stereotypical librarian in that way. I like to go to movies. But find those things that you like to do, and that fulfill you. And especially if you can find something creative, even if you're not, do art, even if you're not great at it. We have one person on our staff who does, we have a couple of people on our staff actually who create music, and I think they're really awesome at it. I think it's really cool. But even if you're not great, write your songs or draw your drawings or any of that kind of thing. It's also a great way to meet new people. And at work, it's really cool because it's a way that you can connect with your coworkers too. You can find out those things that people do, and it just makes working a lot more fun. It's a lot easier to collaborate with people when you know them as people too. So at our library, we actually have a place on our we have a shared Google Drive that we recently started called the EPL Creative Collective. And so we have people upload their creative hobbies and different kinds of things to share with each other. So they'll share their art or their crafts or their music or whatever those things are that they do that fulfill them. And so part of it was created in this like COVID-19 work from home world, where we don't get to do those normal things where we're just chatting with each other in the break room or whatever. So it's kind of a virtual break room sort of thing, kind of a way to keep connected as people, because we all need it. Both we want to stay connected with our coworkers because we like each other, and also we just want to be connected with some people. But it's a great way to share, to learn about those hobbies, to share those hobbies, to find out who has hobbies that are similar to yours, so you have another connection with each other. But it really does, it reduces the burnout. It makes it so that your work is more fulfilling. It seems like filling your life with more things would be, a lot of these seem a little counterintuitive, don't do everything right away. Don't, ignore your email, find a hobby, take your vacation. That seems like it would make you less productive, but it makes you a better person and a more well-rounded person. And that actually makes you happier and less susceptible to burnout in your work. And so it actually makes you more productive if you do all these other things. So those are my kind of 10 techniques. Does anybody have any questions or comments or tips or things that they want to share? You can put it in the chat.
Hey, Jenny, I have a question.
Yes.
So you touched on it briefly about how you're working from home, how we're all working from home, and our spaces are not as organized as maybe our offices were. Do you have any tips for working from home when you're maybe not working in a traditional office? Maybe you're working at the kitchen table. Maybe your pets are on top of you. Maybe your kids are on top of you.
Yeah, I'm really surprised they didn't get a cat like jumping up in my face during this. Really, I really thought they were gonna.
There's still time.
I know, they may come out like, oh wait, she's still on there. Oh, gotta get, yeah. So. Well, it's one of the things is trying to have a space that feels kind of like your workspace. And it's hard because you live there too. But I have a desk, just a small desk in our living room that had always kind of been like a junk pile kind of place, really. And so I've really tried to clear that off and make that feel like a workspace. I do try to wear at least like work-ish clothes. I'm more dressed up today because of doing a webinar, but trying to at least sort of feel like there's some continuity and that it feels like I'm working and I'm not just like hanging out at home and, oh, I happen to be working too. So that's helped me a lot. And then keeping my house cleaner, I will take a little bit of time to like make sure that the dishes are put in the dishwasher and things like that, so that I have, so it feels a little bit less like there's a million things to do. So I'll spend some time like in the morning or in the evening to make sure that there's not all those things that are distracting me of work, like housework, so that when I'm working from home, I'm not thinking like, oh crap, I really need to do the dishes. So.
Yeah, thanks.
Regarding Eat That Frog, is it better to do the big thing first or take care of the low-hanging fruit so you can take some things off your to-do list? I always thought that the low-hanging fruit was a really good way to do things. And sometimes, some days there's like, okay, I got to get something. I have to feel like I've completed something. But I've actually found a lot of times that the big thing, it feels better, because if not, it's kind of like looming there. And that's why they talk about it as eating a frog. Like if you know you're going to have to eat a frog during the day and then you're doing all this other stuff, you're still got that frog like sitting there croaking at you like, are you going to eat me yet? Like, ugh. But it really depends on how you focus on things and how you think about things. And sometimes I really do need to just get a couple of things knocked off of my to-do list so that it feels like I've accomplished something. And that's okay too. Some of this is just figuring out how you function. And I come from, before being a librarian, I worked at a daily newspaper. And so things are getting accomplished all the time. You know, I was putting together a newspaper and every night the newspaper was done and it would go to the press. And then the next day I had to do another newspaper. So it always felt completed when I would leave work. And getting into the library where I have a lot of projects that are going on forever or really long projects it was a really hard transition for me. So some days it just being able to say, hey, I got this done, felt really good. And so whatever kind of works for you. And there's no like one size fits all kind of rule for that. So yeah. Yeah, working from home, developing a visual system that says "Do not disturb me." that is a good thing. We actually at work have little "Do not disturb" flags that we can put up on our computer if we're really focusing on something, because we have kind of an open workspace for most of our staff. And we were finding it was really hard, like somebody come over with a question and you're in the middle of something. So trying to find those, and now you cannot be on Do Not Disturb all the time because collaboration is important. But when you're doing those big projects, it's nice to be able to have a way to say, okay, right now I need to focus on this for 25 minutes and then I can answer your question or we can, you know, whatever. So yeah. Does anybody else have any questions? I don't think I missed any. So
yeah, this was so helpful, Jenny.
Oh, thank you. Well,
You're
and
great.
if you have more questions, I've got my contact information. The phone number goes to my office and I will eventually get the voicemails emailed to me, but email is really the best way to reach out right now, which should surprise nobody because everybody's kind of in that weird space. And also I have a bit.ly there with those slides and my sources and some additional kind of information and things that you can read about. So if there's something that you need to kind of look at a little bit more. Okay, a couple more questions. Recognizing the different ways that different people are productive. Yeah, so you kind of have to, for yourself, you need to kind of work at what works for you. And then you have to remember that not everything works for everybody. So sometimes just even having a conversation, and it might be something good to talk about at your staff meeting, is, you know, what are some ways that you feel most productive so that you start to learn how different people's workflows look and how they are able to focus. it's interesting because everybody has a different, people's brains just work different ways. And some people, you know, you talk about visual learners or auditory learners, and there's different ways of focusing and different ways of productivity for different people. Now, there are some things that are pretty universal, like people go, well, I really thrive in multitasking. Well, you maybe don't as much as you think. And so some of it is being open to trying those new things. But also remembering that everybody has a different job, everybody has different things to accomplish, and it always looks different. Oh, and people, different times of day, all of those kinds of things. Yeah, it's finding what works for you, and then what works for your coworkers may look different. I've found that I don't particularly like mornings. But I've actually found that going into work a little bit earlier before anybody else gets there, I have my time to, you know, go through what I need to do for the day, check my email, and start to get some stuff done before I'm answering questions for people, and collaborating. It gives me some time. So, yes, and Panda Planner, I have mine right here. I like to decorate them. So if you Google Panda Planner, I think it's just pandaplanner.com. Hold on. Panda Planner. Yeah, pandaplanner.com. So it has a monthly, weekly, and daily section. So I don't use the monthly very much. You know, you fill out a calendar, but then it has a place where you can sit down each week, at the beginning of each week, and kind of review your week before, and start to plan the big projects for your upcoming week and what you really want to get done. And then every day you can fill it out, and it has a gratefulness component and an affirmation component and an exercise component, and you can use whatever kind of works for you. According to the guy on the website, he developed it when he had some issues with Lyme disease and a traumatic brain injury and things. So he was having a lot of trouble, you know, focusing and getting things done. And so looked at psychology and neuroscience to kind of create this system. And it's been really helpful for me. This is the second year that I've been doing it. And it's really nice because each day it has a daily schedule of like, what are you doing at these different times? What are the tasks you need to get done? What are the priorities you need to get done? And then there's an end of the day review too, where you can write down what your wins were and something that you need to do to improve yourself. I don't usually remember to do the thing in the evening, but sometimes I do. But whatever, you know, again, whatever parts of it work for you. So
I know that like bullet journaling was popular too.
Like bullet journaling, but it's already set up for you, so you don't have to take the time to set it up. Because I think that's how I found. I'm trying to remember how I found the Panda Planner. I think I was thinking about bullet journaling, but I was like, oh, it seems like so much work.
It just, yeah.
And so then Panda Planner was like, oh, okay, it's bullet journaling, but you know, easier. So. And yes, Susie, our library, we reopened on Sunday the 15th, and then we closed early on Monday the 16th. So we were open to the public for an entire 12 hours of service before we had to close the library again, for the main library. So that was, that was a little bit of a disappointment, but we're looking forward to getting back to normal, except there is no normal anymore, but we're looking forward to getting back into our main library. So reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm happy to chat with people, and I'm glad you guys are liking the links and everything.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I can't wait to go and figure out how I can eat that frog, because
that one, I mean, I tell you, that one's been helpful, even though it's so gross.
Yeah, it's hard to, the more you say it, the more it's like, oh, that's so. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone. Just to let you know, we do have 2 more webinars currently scheduled for our members in April. On Thursday, we have one about serving patrons with disabilities, and that is at 10 a.m. And then next Tuesday, the 21st, we have one on the copyright decision tree, and that is at 3 p.m. If you're interested in either of those, you can visit the ILF website and RSVP as a member, or you can email me and I can make sure that you get on those lists as well. And also just a quick reminder that we have our ILF networking and sharing events. We have one scheduled every afternoon this week at 2 p.m. Depending on your interest in your area of expertise. So take a look at the ILF calendar, and those are open to everybody. So thank you so much, Jenny. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you so much.
And everybody take care. Bye. Thank you.